I am continuing my reading. What I'm doing in this series is to read through the entire standard works of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This consists of the Bible, the Book of Mormon, the Doctrine and Covenants, and the Pearl of Great Price. I am reading in a chronological order of events, not according to publication or volume, so I will be skipping around a bit as I move along. So I'm continuing in Alma. We're going to stay in the story of the missionary travels of the sons of Mosiah and their companions. What we read last was Ammon's defense of the king's sheep, his flocks, and killed 6 men with a sling, 1 with a sword, and chopped off a few arms, and the people brought the arms back to King Lamoni as a testament to what had happened. So now we pick this up in chapter 18. This chapter is a little long, so we're going to read right now the first 19 verses, 1 through 19. King Lamoni supposes that Ammon is the Great Spirit. Ammon teaches the king of the creation, of God's dealings with men, and of the redemption that comes through Christ. Lamoni believes and falls to the earth as if dead. And it came to pass that King Lamoni caused that his servants should stand forth and testify to all the things which they had seen concerning the matter. And when they had all testified to the things which they had seen, and he had learned of the faithfulness of Ammon in preserving his flocks, and also of his great power in contending against those who sought to slay him, he was astonished exceedingly, and said, Surely this is more than a man. Behold, is not this the Great Spirit, who doth send such great punishments upon this people because of their murders? And they answered the king and said, Whether he be the Great Spirit or a man, we know not. But this much we do know, that he cannot be slain by the enemies of the king, neither can they scatter the king's flocks when he is with us, because of his expertness and great strength. Therefore we know that he is a friend to the king. And now, O king, we do not believe that a man has such great power, for we know he cannot be slain. And now when the king heard these words, he said unto them, Now I know that it is the Great Spirit, and he has come down at this time to preserve our lives, that I might not slay you as I did your brethren. Now this is the Great Spirit of whom our fathers have spoken. Now this was the tradition of Lamoni, which he had received from his father, that there was a Great Spirit. Notwithstanding they believed in a Great Spirit, they supposed that whatsoever they did was right. Nevertheless Lamoni began to fear exceedingly with fear, lest he had done wrong in slaying his servants. For he had slain many of them, because their brethren had scattered their flocks at the place of water, and thus, because they had had their flocks scattered, they were slain. Now it was the practice of these Lamanites to stand by the waters of Sebus, to scatter the flocks of the people, that thereby they might drive away many that were scattered unto their own land, it being a practice of plunder among them. And it came to pass that King Lamoni inquired of his servants, saying, Where is this man that has such great power? And they said unto him, Behold, he is feeding thy horses. Now the king had commanded his servants, previous to the time of the watering of their flocks, that they should prepare his horses and chariots, and conduct him forth to the land of Nephi. For there had been a great feast appointed at the land of Nephi for the father of Lamoni, who was king over all the land. Now when King Lamoni heard that Ammon was preparing his horses and his chariots, he was more astonished because of the faithfulness of Ammon, saying, Surely there has not been any servant among all my servants that has been so faithful as this man. For even he doth remember all my commandments to execute them. Now I surely know that this is the Great Spirit, and I would desire him that he come in unto me, but I durst not. And it came to pass that when Ammon had made ready the horses and the chariots for the king and his servants, he went in unto the king, and he saw that the countenance of the king was changed. Therefore he was about to return out of his presence. And one of the king's servants said unto him, Rabbana, which is, being interpreted, powerful or great king, considering their kings to be powerful. And thus he said unto him, Rabbana, the king desireth thee to stay. Therefore Ammon turned himself unto the king, and said unto him, What wilt thou that I should do for thee, O king? And the king answered him not for the space of an hour, according to their time, for he knew not what he should say unto him. And it came to pass that Ammon said unto him again, What desirest thou of me? But the king answered him not. And it came to pass that Ammon, being filled with the Spirit of God, therefore he perceived the thoughts of the king. And he said unto him, Is it because thou hast heard that I defended thy servants and thy flocks, and slew 7 of their brethren with the sling and with the sword, and smote off the arms of others, in order to defend thy flocks and thy servants? Behold, is it this that causeth thy marvelings? I say unto you, what is it that thy marvelings are so great? Behold, I am a man, and am thy servant. Therefore, whatsoever thou desirest, which is right, that will I do. Now when the king had heard these words, he marveled again, for he beheld that Ammon could discern his thoughts. But notwithstanding this, King Lamoni did open his mouth, and said unto him, Who art thou? Art thou that great spirit who knows all things? Ammon answered, and said unto him, I am not. We're going to leave that there. Again, very famous story, but a couple of things to keep in mind here. First, the king had given 2 commands. He said, look, you're going to go water the flocks. When you're done with that, come back and prepare the horses and chariots. The other servants, just in amazement of what Ammon had done, collected the arms up and brought them to the king. Ammon himself, he came back and he went and he tended to the horses and chariots. He got it all ready for the trip to the land of Nephi. Then he came in. He wasn't summoned to the king. Said the king was scared to summon Ammon, and he was worried. But Ammon came into the king because he had done everything the king had asked him to do. And he was going to the king to find out what was next. What's the next thing to do? And when he goes in and he sees everybody just kind of staring at him, he's like, okay, this is a little odd. And he turns to leave, and they say, don't, stay. And so he stays, and we get this beginning of this teaching of King Lamoni. Now, in addition, we have the story, the Lamanites that he defended the flocks from. This was a common practice. The king knew this was going on, but it was a common thing. Scatter the flocks, and then you can steal some of them, and nobody will know it was you, because they were all scattered, and the wandering sheep is free for anybody to take. This was a way of plundering among the Lamanites. They were plundering their own people. And on a final note, Lamoni's father is in the land of Nephi. Now, the land of Nephi, this is where the people of Zeniff had lived. Now, technically, the land of Nephi, when Nephi separates from Laman and Lemuel, way back in the book of 2 Nephi, they settle in the land that becomes known as the land of Nephi. And Laman and Lemuel stay in the land of Lehi. When Mosiah takes his people and they flee up and they find Zarahemla, it's because the Lamanites have conquered the land of Nephi. They have taken control of it. Zeniff then returns because he wants to reclaim the land of Nephi. And the Lamanites withdraw and they give them the land. And then we have that whole thing of the story of the people of Zeniff. But after Limhi gets the people up to Zarahemla, the king moves back into the land of Nephi. Why is the king over all the land in the land of Nephi? When the Lamanites had been, before the conquering of Nephi, the Lamanites had been centered south of that in the land of Lehi. Why did he move into here? Because this is the town that had been built up by the Nephites. There were buildings here. It was a city. The Lamanites didn't have a city. They didn't build a whole lot of stuff. And what they did build was fairly crude. They were not skilled architects. And so that's why the king is in the land of Nephi. And this becomes the center place of the government. Now, of course, we will see, Lamoni is a king. He's not just a mayor or a governor. He is a king, but he is a king serving under or pledging fealty to his father, who is king over all the land. Now, if we look at the timeline again, this isn't about the year 90 BC. The people of Limhi left the land of Nephi in about 120, so it's only been 30 years. This is the same king of the Lamanites. The king, Lamoni's father, I'll say possibly was the king who had subjected Limhi's people in bondage. He almost certainly was the king that brought Alma's people into bondage with Ammon. Although there is the possibility, and I actually think it was his father, so Lamoni's grandfather, that subjected Limhi's people at least. And I'll modify my statement. He was probably still king at the time that they all escaped into Zarahemla, and then died shortly thereafter. That is King Laman in the story of the people of Zeniff. And so Lamoni is the grandson of King Laman, and his father then was a child, or was 12, 13 years old, at the time that the Lamanite daughters were kidnapped, were taken by the priests of Noah. That would have been in about the year 135, 140 BC. And so now he's in his 60s. The father of Lamoni is in his 60s, and Lamoni himself is in his 30s or 40s. And we get the timeline here. And I'll talk about this again a little more in later chapters, because I think it's important to see where all these guys fit in the timeline. What was going on when they were younger? How do they interact with the rest of the story? So keeping that in mind, we'll end it here. We'll pick this up, read the rest of this chapter next, and I'll see you there.